Ecclesiastes chapter 5. We're going to read from verse 10 through chapter 6. Chapter 5, verse 10 through chapter 6. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity. When good things increase, those who consume them increase. So what is the advantage to their owners except to look on? The sleep of the working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much. But the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep. There is a grievous evil which I have seen under the sun, riches being hoarded by their owner to his hurt. When those riches were lost through a bad investment, and he had fathered a son, then there was nothing to support him. As he had come naked from his mother's womb, so he will return as he came. He will take nothing from the fruit of his labor that he can carry in his hand. This also is a grievous evil. Exactly as a man is born, thus will he die. So what is the advantage to him who toils for the wind? Throughout his life, he also eats in darkness with great vexation, sickness, and anger. Here's what I have seen to be good and fitting: to eat, to drink, and enjoy oneself in all one's labor in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him, for this is his reward. Furthermore, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, He has also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. For he will not often consider the years of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the gladness of his heart. There's an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is prevalent among men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that his soul lacks nothing of all that he desires, yet God has not empowered him to eat from them, for a foreigner enjoys them. This is vanity and a severe affliction. If a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, however many they be, but his soul is not satisfied with good things, and he does not even have a proper burial, then I say, better the miscarriage than he. For it comes in futility and goes into obscurity, and its name is covered in obscurity. It never sees the sun, and it never knows anything. It is better off than he. Even if the other man lives 1,000 years twice and does not enjoy good things, do not all go to the one place? All a man's labor is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage does the wise man have over the fool? What advantage does the poor man have, knowing how to walk before the living? What the eyes see is better than what the soul desires. This too is futility and a striving after wind. Whatever exists has already been named, and it is known what man is, for he cannot dispute with him who is stronger than he is. For there are many words which increase futility. What then is the advantage to a man? For who knows what is good for a man during his lifetime, during the few years of his futile life? He will spend them like a shadow. For who can tell a man what will be after him under the sun? And then turn to chapter 11. We'll read verses 1 through 6. Chapter 11, verse 1. Cast your bread on the surface of the waters, for you will find it after many days. Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. If the clouds are full, they pour out rain upon the earth, and whether a tree falls toward the south or towards the north, wherever the tree falls, there it lies. He who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind and how bones are formed in the womb of the pregnant woman, so you do not know the activity of God who makes all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and do not be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed, or whether both of them alike will be good. It might seem strange to find Solomon writing to us about the traps of having more. After all, he amassed a fortune. But that's precisely where he writes from. And he doesn't write, espousing theory. He writes from knowledge because he did have a lot. He wrote as a king who possessed land and houses, servants, herds, silver, gold, honor, pleasure, opportunity. And he had those things on a scale that we will never know. And what he discovered was that our souls need something more than any abundance of material things can give. There's no fortune that you can amass that will answer what the soul really needs. That matters for a number of reasons. One, because financial temptations don't just run in one direction. Some people are pulled by the temptation to accumulate, to gather, to store, to hoard, to put up. It's the next purchase. It's the next piece of land. It's the next, whatever the possession is, the thing is. That maybe it's the next paycheck, or the next pay raise. Whatever it is, there's the desire to get that. And the temptation is, if I get that, then I'll be happy. That will be enough. If I can only reach that, then things will be better and I can rest. But the other side of that is the people who are tempted by scarcity. And so there's the temptation to fret over the next payment, the next thing that's going to break and has to be repaired, the next, the fear that one bad season is going to destroy everything that I've worked so hard for. And you could be tempted to one or the other, sometimes maybe in a sense both. But those circumstances are not identical. And Solomon doesn't treat them as if they are identical. The man who can't sleep because he has so much to protect is not the same situation as the man who lies awake because he doesn't know where the next meal is coming from. Both situations tempt us to ask money to do what they aren't meant to do, what it's not meant to do. One says, if I had a little bit more, I'd finally be satisfied. The other says, if I had a little bit more, I'd finally be secure. Solomon answers both. The controlling contrast that he gives us in these chapters appears between verses 5:19 and 6:2. So in 5:19, he talks about how God gives a man riches and wealth, and he also gives him the power to enjoy them, to receive his reward and to rejoice in his labor. But then in chapter 6 and verse 2, God gives a man wealth, he gives him riches, he gives him honor, so that his soul lacks nothing that he desires, but he doesn't give him the power to enjoy it. Someone else enjoys it, a foreigner. The difference is not the amount possessed. The difference is the power to enjoy it. Money can be present without contentment, without security, without sleep, without joy. Even enjoyment must be received from God. So before Solomon tells us how to act wisely with uncertain resources, first he strips away the illusion that those resources could provide either satisfaction or security here in chapters 5 and 6. So first we'll look at the fact that more cannot satisfy you. We see this first in verses 10 through 12 of chapter 5, and Solomon begins there with a sentence that's simple enough to understand and searching enough to expose us. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity. A quick reminder, the word vanity here By the way, in some of the places we've read in these chapters, it also mentions futility. It's the same word, but the word is not just nothingness or meaninglessness. It describes what's fleeting and impossible to master. When Solomon calls this pursuit havel, futility, he's not saying money is worthless. Can't do anything good with money. Obviously, there are good things you can do with money. But he is saying that loving money as the answer to our hunger is trying to hold a vapor in your fist. You can't do it. And money won't feel that longing. You can't grip it tightly enough to make it satisfy you. Again, doesn't say that money can't meet certain needs. Money buys food, it buys clothing, shelter, tools, medicine. Doesn't say that earning money, saving money, owning money, or planning are evil. So the issue isn't just money, the issue is the love of money. The person who loves money will never be satisfied with money. The object that we crave will not satisfy the craving that we have. You may have heard of the quote that's often attributed to John D. Rockefeller. When he was asked how much is enough, and his answer was just a little more. Just a little more. And that, said a long time ago, it's endured because it's easy to identify with. Just a little bit more. How much is that? I don't know, but it's a little bit more. There's always another level. The tool, the thing, that we once thought would take care of the problem, you get it, and it just doesn't do what you thought it would do. It doesn't, it doesn't deliver. The land we dreamed of owning, we get it, and then we start looking at the piece of property over there, and we see all the benefits that property has that this property doesn't, and now we're unsatisfied. More keeps promising to become enough, and it never does. And so more than thinking about what I want, what if only that, some other questions might be worth asking, like, what do I imagine this will give me besides the thing itself? Do I believe the next purchase, the next income level, the next expansion will finally make me secure or prove that I've succeeded? If I received what I'm pursuing, could I really rest? Or would the definition of enough move again? Money can provide real things, but it cannot provide satisfaction. And then in verse 11 of chapter 5, he adds another frustration. When good things increase, those who consume them increase. So what is the advantage to their owners except to look on? This isn't a condemnation of having dependents or of having employees or of taxes or repairs or any of those kinds of things. But it just is an observation that the more you have to take care of. The more things you have, the more maintenance you have. Maybe the more taxes you have to pay. There's just more stuff to be concerned about, to care for. And then in verse 12, he draws the contrast even more sharply when he says that the sleep of the working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich man does not allow him to sleep. You can think about the person who goes to work and they're able to leave work at work and go home and forget about it and go to bed and rest. And then you got the person whose work comes home with them. And, they can't leave it there. There's phone calls that follow them maybe, or there's concerns about what's going to happen tomorrow. And there's just stuff that comes home with you. And you don't find yourself resting because there are these concerns that I have. Or, you can be concerned about the markets and what they're doing because they're up and down. And the guy didn't have anything in the market, doesn't have to worry about that. And so there are concerns that come with having stuff. And Solomon's just noting that sometimes more isn't better. Money might buy a better bed, but it can't guarantee sleep. It doesn't necessarily satisfy. Second, more cannot secure you. It can't give you security. Not really. Verse 13 says, there's a grievous evil which I have seen under the sun, riches being hoarded by their owner to his hurt. Wealth can be kept to our hurt. Hoarded wealth is not harmless just because it remains in the owner's possession. If we hoard wealth, if we're clinging to it, like, my life is tied up in this, then it can narrow our heart, it can dominate our thoughts, it can increase our suspicion towards others, it can threaten our stewardship. We can think we possess things when in fact those possessions possess us, and we're ruled by them. And then Solomon describes another possibility. The wealth is lost through a bad venture. You think you've accumulated this wealth and you're going to pass it on to your kids, and it disappears. This isn't condemning being prudent and saving and trying to provide an inheritance. It's just saying if you think that's security and you're setting your kids up for success, the money can disappear and then you don't have it and you're not able to do what you thought you would be able to do. It doesn't provide the security that we're tempted to give it, to think it does. There are things that happen outside of our control. We can make our plans, but we can't make providence, obey our plans. In verse 15, he brings death into the argument. As he had come naked from his mother's womb, so he'll return as he came. He'll take nothing from the fruit of his labor that he can carry in his hand. So again, you accumulate, you preserve, you plan, and then death comes and it puts you in the same position as the person who had nothing. The familiar line remains true about there being no U-Hauls behind hearses. We don't take it with us when we go. It's all left. But the fact that he's talking about the possibility of things disappearing or even death taking things, it's not to say that death does not make work meaningless. That's not what he's saying. It doesn't make property evil. It doesn't mean we should refuse to provide for those who come after us. But he is saying that death is a good, like a magnification lens that exposes where our hope is. If that's what we're hoping in, it proves that possessions can never be the ultimate source of security because they can't cross the boundary from this life to the next. In verse 17, all of this works so that throughout this man's life, he also eats in darkness with great vexation, sickness, and anger. The greatest loss is not just the potential for the loss of money, it's the disintegration of the man himself, whose life rests on his possessions. His hoped-for future collapsed, and because his heart was built on that future, he collapses with it. Job is a useful contrast to the picture that Solomon's drawing for us here. You remember that Job lost his children, he lost his possessions, he lost his livelihood, his health, all of it gone in just a short period of time. A word comes, one messenger after the other. This has happened, this has happened, this has happened. And Job was not detached from the gifts that God had given him. Yet he could say, the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He could say that because beneath his grief and his confusion, his hope was not set on those things. His hope remained in the giver rather than finally resting in the gifts. He didn't deny the goodness of the gifts. He didn't deny that they were precious. Some of them were his children. It's not like he's saying, who cares? Not at all. He confessed that they were gifts and that the Lord remained when they were taken. If my hope is in the gift, then the loss of the gift takes the hope away with it. But if my hope is in the Lord, then even if those things are taken away, the hope remains because the Lord remains. We may weep, we may grieve, we may feel the wound, but we're not left without God. Third, only God can give the power to enjoy whatever portion you have, whatever is yours, whatever gifts He's given to you, only God can give you the power to enjoy it. Again, we see this in verses 5:18 through chapter 6, we see it. After the darkness of verses 13 through 17, Solomon gives us a positive word. In verse 18, he says, "Here is what I have seen to be good and fitting, to eat, to drink, and enjoy oneself in all one's labor in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him, for this is his reward." He's not saying distract yourself with food and drink because this life is meaningless and this is all there is, so fill up with all you can get. He's not talking like that at all. But in a world that we can't master, in a world that we can't control, God has real gifts that He gives to us for our enjoyment. We should receive them with gratitude. The repeated language of giving is important here. God gives the days of life. God gives riches and wealth. God gives the power to eat from them. God gives the ability to receive one's portion and rejoice in one's labor. The possessions, in a sense, are one gift, the whole lump of them. And the enjoyment is another gift. You can have a table full of food, and if you don't have any appetite, you can't enjoy it. You can have land and never appreciate its beauty. You can have kids and be so busy with other concerns that you never enjoy them. You never enjoy being around them. You can have enough and live like you're one step from ruin. The presence of the gifts God has given does not automatically mean that you have the power to enjoy them. The contentment in those things that God's given you is not pretending that little is much. It's not, it's not refusing to acknowledge hardship. I'm going to pretend like this hardship really isn't hard because I'm content. That's not it. As much as it is just not asking the things God has given to you to give you more than they're supposed to give. My hope is in the Lord. Whatever He gives, whether little or much, my hope is settled in Him. Chapter 6 presents the opposite case. Again, you have the person who has received much and he can't enjoy them. Someone else gets it. Verse 2 says that this is vanity and a severe affliction. Have you thought about the inability to enjoy what God has given to you as a severe affliction? Honestly, I would tend to think more of it in terms of ingratitude. You're ungrateful. Look at what God's given to you and you're ungrateful. But Solomon expands it beyond just ingratitude. It's a severe affliction. I mean, think grief, depression, conflict, exhaustion, fear, anxiety. All of those things can make it so that we find it very difficult to enjoy good things. Solomon takes this misery seriously. And the answer is not just try harder. Work hard at being grateful. Do. But better, bring the affliction to God. Bring it to God and tell Him. Because He's the one who's given you the portion, and He's the only one who can also give you the power to enjoy it. Ask Him to free you from a restless appetite and to restore delight in ordinary gifts. Ask Him to help you find your security in Him and not in things. Ask Him to help you when the inability to enjoy is bound up with deep sorrow or anxiety or illness. Solomon then intensifies the point. He says a man might have 100 children and live many years, but if his soul is not satisfied with good things, he says a stillborn child, a miscarriage, is better than that. that's a shocking statement, and I can only think he's trying to be shocking. Long life, large family, wealth, honor are not enough if the soul is never able to receive the good that they are, the good things God has given. Verse 7 states the problem plainly. Verse 7 of chapter 6. All a man's labor is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not satisfied. The mouth can be fed, we can eat and consume food, and yet not satisfy an appetite that keeps wandering and wants more and wants more. And so the body receives while the soul keeps yearning for more. Verse 9 gives a sentence that is, I believe, helpful. What the eye sees is better than what the soul desires. It's better to receive the gift that your eye sees than to want and want and want the thing your soul desires and miss the thing that your eye sees. It's kind of bird in the hand kind of idea, it seems to me. Like, here's this thing that God's put in front of you. It's right in front of your face. And you're so anxious to have that, you can't even appreciate what's right here. Better, what the eye sees is better than what the soul desires. The trap of wanting more so often keeps us from enjoying what's right there. Our wandering hearts say life will begin and really be good when that happens. Failing to live right now, waiting for that. And when that comes, there's another that. His talk about wanting and wanting is not forbidding ambition or planning or improvement, but it does forbid asking for an imagined future and making it the source of present life and enjoyment. Chapter 6 ends with a list of human limitations. We can't contend with the one who's stronger than we are. Many words increase futility. Who knows what's good for man during the few days of his vain life, which he spends like a shadow? Who can tell him what will come after him? He's not saying that we know nothing about what's good. He's told us to eat, to drink, to labor, to receive our portion, to rejoice in God's gifts. His point is we can't predict or control what's going to happen. We can't control or prove to be good through all the turns of life. We're creatures. We're not God. But we know Him. And it raises a practical question. How should limited people act with uncertain resources in this world that we live in that's governed by God? And I believe that he answers that in chapter 11. Solomon does not respond to uncertainty with anxious hoarding. We're uncertain about what's going to happen in the future, so we're just going to put up as much as we can and be tight-fisted with it. But he also doesn't respond with passivity. I'm paralyzed. I don't know what to do. Life's uncertain. I'm scared to do this. I'm scared to do anything. Like the guy who buries his master's talent. I know you're a hard master, and so I've just buried it. Here's what you had. Solomon rejects both of those. Control as though everything depends on us. Paralysis as though uncertainty excuses inactivity. And he begins in verse 1 with, "Cast your bread on the surface of the waters, for you'll find it after many days." The precise image has been understood as generosity, as commercial venture, or some combination of the two. I think generosity fits Scripture well. In either case, the point involves releasing resources now, even though you can't see what's going to happen. You don't have immediate control over their return, and so by faith, you let them go. Wisdom is willing to act beyond what it can presently see because God. The open hand confesses that God, not the clenched fist, is our security. It's not how much is accumulated. It's God. It's not whether, circumstances have come and wiped out that nest egg. It's still God. He's the security. Faith acts wisely and generously because the God who gave the gift has not ceased to be God. In verse 2, he says, divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth. So the uncertainty of what might happen is not an argument against planning or of being prudent. In a sense, he's saying don't put your eggs in one basket. Divide your portion to 7 to even 8. Wisdom doesn't place every resource in one position as though one outcome were guaranteed. It distributes and it prepares for what can't be predicted. That's not unbelief. That's humility, recognizing we're not God. We don't know what misfortune may occur. Verse 3 reminds us there are events outside of our control. Clouds fill and rains fall. You can't stop it. Before we came to here this afternoon, I looked out the window and the sun was shining and it was raining and a big old thunderclap, it rang out and thought, wow, where'd that come from? I couldn't see the clouds. They were on the other side. But I'm looking at sunshine and rain coming down hard. You can't control it. You can't turn the switch on or off. He talks about how a tree falls and where it falls, it falls. You can't, storms, the recent ice storms, trees everywhere. Which one of you went out in the yard and said, okay, if you're going to fall that way? Or, hey, don't fall. Steve had a tree on his house recently. Do you plan that? Of course not. Every now and then, if I'm like on YouTube or something, I'll see, some disaster happening with somebody trying to cut down a tree. It didn't go like they planned. They're putting wedges in the tree. They've got it tied off to something, and the thing goes the other way and crushes a car or a house. And you didn't plan. You sure didn't plan that. We can't control these things. They're outside of our control. But then in verse 4, he warns against waiting for perfect conditions. If we're looking at all the things we can't control, again, there's the temptation to just, kind of say, don't do anything. I'm scared to move. But verse 4 says, he who watches the wind will not sow, and he who looks at the clouds will not reap. A farmer who's waiting for perfect conditions may never get the seed in the ground. And there comes a time when, if we're going to plant, we got to get it in the ground. We got to plant. If you didn't get the seed in the ground, there's not going to be a harvest, guaranteed. And so in verse 6, sow your seed in the morning. Do not be idle in the evening, for you do not know whether morning or evening sowing will succeed, or whether both of them alike will be good. His answer to the uncertainty is not fatalism, but be industrious. Trust God and be industrious. Work hard, trust God. Work in the morning, continue in the evening, use wisdom, take appropriate risk. Don't wait for conditions that remove the need for faith, because that doesn't usually come. The duty is ours. The results are God's. His sovereignty is not a reason to do nothing. It's the reason we can act without pretending to be sovereign. It's the reason we can act in all the uncertainty and still rest, because God is in control. And then finally, the Apostle Paul restates Solomon's diagnosis in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, which says, "But godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either." Godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. Godliness means a life ordered toward God, a God-ordered life. So trusting Him, obeying Him, allowing Him to govern even our relationship to money and possessions. That kind of life, being satisfied with that, Paul says, great gain. He sounds like Ecclesiastes because he addresses the same reality. Solomon said we enter the world naked and we leave unable to carry anything out. And Paul says something very similar. So the desire to be rich is not harmless. It's a temptation and a snare because it promises a gain that cannot become great gain. Great gain is godliness with contentment. Then Paul addresses those who possess wealth in the 17th verse. Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. The whole sermon's really kind of contained in that one verse. Riches are uncertain. God is the proper object of hope. He supplies gifts for enjoyment, and those who trust Him become generous and ready to share. They pursue that which is life indeed, rather than asking wealth to become life. And the gospel does more than to tell us to just loosen our grip on stuff. The gospel adds to that by giving us a better treasure. 2 Corinthians 8:9 says, "For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though He was rich, yet for your sake He became poor, so that you through His poverty might become rich." Christ didn't come just to change our attitudes about possessions. He gave Himself to rescue us from sin and judgment and death. He took our poverty, our guilt. He took our condemnation, and He gives to everyone who trusts Him an inheritance that cannot perish, cannot be spoiled, cannot be carried away by someone else. When Christ is the treasure, earthly goods do not become worthless. They become smaller in proportion and relative to who God is. If Christ is the great treasure, then these other treasures have to be lesser treasures. And so they're not as significant as they once were. They are also safer because my hope is not set in them. And if they fall apart, I'm still okay. My hope is in Him. And then the good things He provides can be enjoyed because my heart isn't in them. My security is not tied to them. My satisfaction is not tied to them. They're not my identity. They're not my salvation. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. A man found it and from joy sold all that he had to buy the field. He didn't release the lesser treasure, the stuff he already had, because possessions were evil. He let them go because he found something so much better. He had to have it. Christ doesn't just tell us to loosen our grip on stuff. He Himself becomes the treasure that's greater, that makes us willing to let everything else fall to the ground so that we can have Him. If you tend to be tempted by the just a little bit more, to you, ask what you believe more will finally give you. If you reached it, what would you have? If satisfaction is always one purchase away, one more job completed, if satisfaction is one more thing, the problem is no longer the size of your holdings, it's the location of your hope. If you are the person who tends to lie awake because there might not be enough, Solomon doesn't mock your fear. Financial uncertainty is real. Chapter 11, though, does give concrete counsel. Don't freeze. Don't gamble everything on one outcome. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't close your hand in fear. Plan prudently. Work diligently. Give faithfully. And trust God. If you cannot enjoy the good things that God has given to you, the answer can't be reduced to just, you need a better attitude. Bring the affliction to God. Ask Him to teach you to receive the things He's given to you, to free you from the wandering appetite, and to restore joy in ordinary gifts. And to every believer, practice the freedom of enjoying lesser treasures because you have the greatest treasure. Receive the lesser treasures without worshiping them. Enjoy them without grasping them. Save without trusting savings. Give without living as though the God who supplies good things to you has run out and He can't give you any more and He's not faithful anymore. Work without imagining that the result rests entirely on you. Freedom in this regard comes when our hope is fixed on God and our treasure is Christ. And when that treasure is secure, it's easy to have hands that are open.